Meantime, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau will unveil his new cabinet on Tuesday. He's already said Chrystia Freeland will remain as Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister. Trudeau has promised gender parity and regional representation in his cabinet. All right, let's delve into this a little further now. Tom Mulcair joins me now. CTV News political commentator, former NDP leader Lauren MacDonald is also on the panel. Conservative strategist and Muhammad Ali, Liberal strategist, joins us as well. Great to have all three of you on the program.
Good to be with you, Angie.
Tom, I want to start with you first. We're having, we've got extra guests with us on our Sunday chat today, so we're going to broaden things out here.
Great.
Let's talk about the cabinet here. I mean, a lot of speculation in terms of who could be coming in, who's new, who's going to remain. We know that Chrystia Freeland is certainly going to remain in her role, in her portfolio. But your sense here on what the Prime Minister is promising in terms of gender parity, in terms of that diversity. But what do you anticipate we could be seeing tomorrow, Tom?
I think that Justin Trudeau is going to be making a very bold move on Tuesday. I don't think he's got much of a choice. Twice now, Canadian voters have told him, by sending him back with a minority, that they didn't really like what they had been seeing. He's got to show that he understood that and that it went through. I also think that it might be a chance for renewal. He's got great talent in his caucus, and yet he seems to always go back to the same players. Well, some of them, might wind up being good ambassadors somewhere and make room for some of the bright, incredible young people he's got. Think Julie DeBruze in Toronto Danforth, Jack Layton's old riding, or Joel Lightbound in Quebec City, fluently bilingual, full of energy, able to project something new. I think that Mr. Trudeau is going to have no choice but to refresh his team quite a bit.
Mohammed, what do you think in terms of what we could be seeing from the Prime Minister? It's going to be a long day on Tuesday, but it'll be interesting to see who's in and who's out.
Yeah, for sure. And I agree with Mr. Mulcair about there's tons of talent in the Liberal caucus and tons of experienced MPs. I think about a Ruby Sahota from Brampton, a Jennifer O'Connell from Pickering, two battle-tested MPs that are, primed for a promotion into cabinet, can really hold themselves together. There are also people with prior provincial cabinet experience, like Yasser Naqvi out in Ottawa, Lena Diab in Nova Scotia, and also like Sean Fraser, who's done a tremendous job as Parliamentary Secretary for Finance, a great communicator, very well attuned with his local issues and with the broader issues. So, there's a lot of talent for the Prime Minister to both fill his self-mandated gender parity, achieve regional distribution of cabinet, but also promote some very talented people. To Mr. Mulcair's point, you also want to reward some of the people that have stuck out for 3 elections now, have done their duty, have done everything that this government has asked them to promote the message locally. So I suspect there's going to be some fresh blood in there. But there's also some talent that exists in cabinet that you want to ensure that there's institutional memory. People who deserve kind of a promotion. Pablo Rodriguez, the Quebec lieutenant, has done a tremendous job in a number of tough portfolios. Look for him to probably get a promotion. Anita Anand did tremendous work on the vaccine procurement, also primed for a type of promotion.
Lauren, what are your thoughts here? What are you going to be keeping a close eye on in terms of that announcement on Tuesday?
Yeah, I think Canadians are going to be looking for, promotions and bringing in some new talent. There's going to be, in order to get to that gender parity piece, there's going to have to be a couple more women added. And I think that's, a really exciting opportunity. But I also think Canadians are going to be looking to see whether or not there are a couple of replacements in some portfolios that haven't been going so well. We're looking at Defense Minister Harjit Sajjan. And so, portfolios like that where Canadians have been watching for the last number of years, him really drop the ball on some very important issues in relation to sexual assault and issues in the military. And so I think Canadians are going to want to see some action on portfolios like that. Thinking about, health minister as well, thinking about, who might be the right person to put into a role like that as they continue to push forward. The pandemic isn't over, but, not the strongest performance from her throughout the pandemic. A little bit of, wear a mask, and then catching her not wearing a mask in airports. And so things like this, I think there provides an opportunity now to be able to look at the wealth of talent that my colleagues here have just spoken about, and being able to put the right people in these roles. So Canadians see that there is going to be action on some of the portfolios they want to see action on.
What about ensuring, and Tom, let's get you to jump in on this, what about ensuring some of those key voices on key issues are represented In Parliament, again, we are working with a minority government, but Indigenous issues, climate change, those are two big areas, and the Prime Minister really needing to repair, I'm going to say, relationships, regain trust. What about that voice in his cabinet to help the Liberals take better steps forward on their relationship with Indigenous communities on truth and reconciliation?
I think you chose two perfect examples of where the institutional memory that Mohammed referred to has to include people who can get things done. Because Mr. Trudeau has a marvelous plan for climate change. He's just never gotten it done. He's been there for 6 years now. Canada does really, it's objective. It's not an argument. Canada has the worst record in the G7. And we bought a pipeline. So at some point, he's going to be going to Glasgow in just a few days. And you want to make sure that when Canada says something, we're taken seriously, but so far we haven't been delivering. With regard to the Indigenous file, he's still refusing to say that he won't continue the appeal process for orders from both the federal court and the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal that the government compensate First Nations youth for discrimination they suffered in health and social services on reserve. And we couldn't even do something nuts and bolts like deliver water. We have 20% of the world's fresh water. We couldn't even get fresh water into every reserve in Canada, and that was a promise that dates from 2015. So on the mechanics of government, because Mr. Trudeau is absolutely one of the most extraordinary political communicators in the world. He's just that good. He's got people around him who are amazing at controlling the message. But then they actually have to get it done. So putting together the cabinet should include some experience. And by the way, Jean Chrétien made that point in his new book, that there's something lacking in terms of execution of all those wonderful promises that they're so good at communicating.
Lauren, your thoughts here, because the Conservatives are certainly going to be holding the Liberals to account on this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, you know, I completely agree with Mr. Mulcair on the point of, you know, actually, communicating is going great, but the Canadians want to see action, and they want to see action on the files that matter to them. We saw through the election, the government was, the Liberal Party was quite quiet on talking about issues of affordability, and I think that's where Canadians' heads are at right now. You know, with inflation rising, Canadians want to see both their Parliament sitting and coming up with a plan to act on these issues. You know, pocketbook issues usually are quite common to drive messaging on a campaign, and it wasn't something we really saw from the governing Liberals, and it isn't something that we've heard too much about since then. And so I think, you know, in addition to the files that Mr. Mulcair was discussing, I think it's really important for Canadians to also see action on affordability and the files that matter to them.
Mohammed, all eyes are going to be on the Liberals. All eyes are going to be on Justin Trudeau on this. Again, a minority government, so we could be heading to the polls in another 18 months to 2 years. Not a lot of time for him to prove himself, you know, to say, okay, we can move forward on this and eventually get another term.
Well, you know, after an election, I mean, Canadians did choose a Liberal government to continue leading them through this pandemic and to economic recovery. You know, after an election, you know, there's a little bit of a grace period where the new governing party can have a little bit more wiggle room, saying that, you know, immediately Canadians made this call that they wanted us to address. And, you know, I look in this cabinet that, you know, they're going to be addressing affordability. You know, housing is a big piece of, which is a concern for Canadians. Climate change remains a top priority. We heard the Prime Minister repeatedly talk about the need to take serious action on climate change. He wants to deliver on some of those key pieces, which he has to date on a number of, such as carbon pricing. So there's going to be a number of pieces for him to work through, and that's where some of the strong cabinet ministers will be placed in some of those roles. You know, there are issues around regional representation. So you're going to find now someone from Alberta in cabinet, someone who can speak from both the energy industry and the transformation that's going on there, but also the importance of transition. Transition is an important part for a number of sectors across the country when we talk about climate change. So expect to see some of that reflected in this cabinet.
Yeah, and timelines are going to be really, really tight, because there's a couple of things here. Not only, okay, he's announcing the cabinet on the 26th, Parliament doesn't resume until November 22nd. They're probably there for what, maybe a couple of weeks before then they, you know, the House is I guess, is closed for the Christmas holidays. So not a lot of work is going to get done. Couple that with the Prime Minister has said everyone that's coming into Parliament needs to be vaccinated. So, Lauren, I want to get you to jump in on this, on the vaccination part of it first, because that's been a bone of contention, I can say, with Conservative leader Erin O'Toole, who has not yet agreed to, disclose that all or which of his MPs have been fully vaccinated.
Yeah, I think that Parliament's definitely going to have to the Conservative Party is going to have to get to a place where they're able to move forward and work with whatever comes about in Parliament in terms of the decision there. Here in Ontario, at least, the Speaker, ruled that there was kind of a balance between, members were required to be vaccinated and or be tested. And so coming to a bit of a middle ground where we're able to both protect those who are working and participating in the House, but also making sure that people are vaccinated and knowing how important that is. Parliamentarians are held to a really high account, and so I think there's going to be a lot of conversation within Conservative circles about this. I think being able to continue to push forward the message that it is very important to get vaccinated while also balancing the issues within the party that we've been discussing. I think it's there is an opportunity, in some other legislatures like here in Ontario have really found a good balance there. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of these discussions.
Tom, I've just got about a few seconds left here, but your take on this: a lot to be done, not a lot of time, and everyone's got to be vaccinated.
And going back to your point earlier, Angie, we're looking at another election in 18 to 24 months, because that's the historical record on these things. Mr. O'Toole's got to come up with a clear, clean message. He's been trying to navigate between his caucus and some hesitancy there and the public. We're not talking about somebody working on a computer screen in their basement. We're talking about somebody walking into a public space with hundreds of employees in the Parliament of Canada. You can't have a debate about whether or not you're going to be vaccinated when you're in that atmosphere.
Absolutely. And we're going to continue to follow big day on Tuesday. A lot of coverage here on CTV News Channel regarding that, those cabinet announcements. Tom Mulcair, Lauren McDonald, Muhammad Ali. Great to have all three on the program. I'd love to get you all back. We'll talk about this in more detail in the coming days.
For sure. Thanks for having me.
You all take care.